is Kenny Pickett at quarterback for the Steelers. And that's why I would probably have them ranked last in this division, but they also have the X factor, which is Mike Tomlin. So I'd say they probably finish at worst second or third in the division.
See, now I have a caveat for all three of those things for each team. Cleveland, yes, Deshaun Watson should bounce back, but they're Cleveland. They're going to bumble along the way like they always do. Lamar Jackson does win games until week 12 when he's hurt and he can't come back, and they lose the rest of them and miss out on the playoffs. And Kenny Pickett, I don't know if you've noticed lately, but all of these, sophomore quarterbacks coming out of college, first rounders, they have a great second-year jump. Every one of them lately for the last 4 years.
Yeah, and but those are guys like Burrow and Herbert.
Listen, Kenny Pickett was the first round pick, just like the rest of those.
All right,
talk about Kenny Pickett.
Adam, as you're hearing all this, what's going through your head?
Well, I mean, my feeling on Lamar Jackson is I kind of agree with the previous point that he's not really a quarterback. He's more of a running back. I've always felt he's a running back that can throw the ball, not a quarterback who can run the ball. But what I'm interested to see in Baltimore is the big change at offensive coordinator, right? They fired Greg Roman. They brought in Todd Monken. So they're going to have a completely different offense, more of a passing style offense than that Greg Roman creative quarterback running style. So we're all going to get to see, I think, exactly what Lamar Jackson can be in more of a traditional style offense. I mean, of course, he's going to still run the ball, but it's not going to look the same as it always looked because it's a completely new offensive system, which, by the way, is what he wanted. He wants to be more of a quarterback because he doesn't like being called a guy who can just run the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. And the one other thing that I have to throw in here because it hasn't been brought up yet, this Joe Burrow injury. We don't know how serious the Burrow injury is. There's buzz out there that he could miss some games. How many games is he going to miss? This is a very competitive division. If he misses the first 4 or 5 games, which I don't think he's going to, I think he's going to be fine, but there is some buzz out there that that could change everything.
Yeah, I mean, and I think what really factors in, and I agree, I don't think he'll miss the beginning of the season, but it's a long season. And as many hits and sacks as he took last year, he's not going to be able to keep going with that injury throughout the whole season. So that could definitely blow up their stuff. You're joining us live. I want to welcome the Fantasy Sports Corporation channel. Sorry you're coming in the middle, but look, we are doing this live from Canton. We are in Canton. We are here at the Fantasy Expo doing this show live today. Myself and Adam Holz at Adam Holz Sports broke down every team every week, the entire season. You can find that at that EFIN Sports Show, EFIN. Listen to all those episodes. These ones only about 15 minutes. There's a couple 20-minute ones in there, but you go through every division. You see the records on the screen. We predicted the entire thing. Now we're getting some live reactions, as live as it gets right here in Canton, from Jordan Thomas of the Fantasy Sports Corporation, last year's winner of the Trenches, and David Genis of Genesis Card Breaks over on Facebook, right? You're on Facebook? Yeah, so find Genesis Card Breaks over there. We're going down our work here where myself and Adam have opened ourselves up to some live critiquing. We moved to the NFC West, a very interesting division. Myself and Adam have made the observation, the comment that when you look at each division, it's kind of like there's a pretty clear line between the top 2 and the bottom 2. And that may be true for no more true. I don't know how it's true. It's for this division. This is what you get when you go live. You don't get to edit any of this stuff out. This division, it holds true more than any other division. There are 2 at the top and there are 2 way at the bottom. And you see it reflected in the records here, whether you agree with the actual numbers of the records or not. And you can see as we broke this down game by game, it's really hard to argue with that point that it's going to be San Francisco and Seattle in this division battling. The question is going to be, will they both get in? What are you guys thinking over there?
So I feel like, from an accuracy perspective, this one looks the tightest I've seen so far from you guys.
Sure.
I definitely think San Francisco and Seattle are going to be the top teams in the division. I really like Adam's record for San Francisco, 10-7. I think they quietly have some holes on that team. I don't know what we're going to see out of Brock Purdy. I don't know if we'll see any Trey Lance. Like, I think they got some questions, but we all know what San Francisco does. They figure it the hell out, and they get in the playoffs, they win 10 games, right? So whether it's 10, whether it's 12, I don't know. I like the pick of Seattle to win the division.
They just seem to be the most complete team, right? I mean, they've got a monster offense to the point that you have to think about them from a fantasy perspective. You get a little hesitant from a fantasy perspective because there's so many mouths to feed there. We won't get too far down that tangent, although we can. Nick Collins would disagree with how things are going at the quarterback position, but I happen to agree with it. It's pretty much plug and play there. So whether it's Purdy or Lance, it's just not knowing which one you're going to get. David, what are you thinking? Just as you look over this,
stick me in at quarterback at San Fran and win 10 games.
You kind of get that feeling.
They're to me, this is San Fran's division to lose, and it does completely come down to their quarterback health. They didn't seem to have a string of bad luck with that. I think that they, edge out Seattle if their quarterback stay healthy. I think Arizona does a little bit better than your record shows, and I think the Rams do a little bit worse. Well, yours is about accurate. I think 5-6 games. But theirs comes down to a lot of health too. I mean, if some of these young guys get coached up by, Cup and if he plays and Stafford, they have a shot. They have, a talented coaching staff over there, but this is definitely San Fran and Seattle's division.
And Adam, David brought up the health issues, which is why we have the record where we have for the Rams, because we don't know if Stafford's coming back healthy. We don't know which Cooper Kupp we're going to get on the field. And as far as Arizona, we don't see anything there that stands out as a top tier talent anywhere on the board, even if Kyler Murray does play, which he's probably not going to for at least the first few games. Right, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, my gut feeling right now, if I had to guess, is I don't think Kyler is going to play at all this year. And that's just kind of how I'm feeling right now. That could change. I think he's going to miss at least the early part of the season. And I think that Arizona is going to be so bad in the early part of the year that there's going to kind of be no reason really to bring him back, and he won't have much motivation to come back. That's just my opinion right now. And as for the Rams, a lot of that comes down to Stafford, right? If we get a fully healthy Stafford all year, it wouldn't surprise me if they found a way to maybe even 10 wins. That wouldn't fully shock me, but on the flip side, if the same thing happens to him this year, what happened last year, I could see them winning 4 or 5 games even. So the Rams, a very tricky team to me, all kind of laying on Stafford, but a fully healthy Stafford with McVay, with Cooper Kupp, with Aaron Donald, they could still make a little bit of noise in the wild card race, especially considering how bad relatively the NFC conference is, and that wild card feels pretty wide open.
And let's not forget, as we look, again, when we break it down, game by game, these guys have to play all the teams in the AFC North. These guys have to play all the teams in the NFC East. The schedule is not easy on these guys. And so when you talk about teams with question marks like the Rams and Arizona, it's definitely a big reason that the records look the way they look.
One of my big things with the Rams too is beyond Stafford, Kupp, and Donald, not only are they super young, I mean, I think probably one of the youngest teams in the league, but they don't have the pedigree because they traded away all their first round picks for several years in a row. So they have to literally nail every one of their draft picks to be competitive in a division with San Francisco and Seattle.
And that doesn't happen very often. We brought up the NFC East. We bring it in. I know Jordan's ready for this one. He's here for it because, like Adam, he is a Dallas fan. I'm sorry, folks. It's live. I can't do anything about it. We are live from Canton. Here are the records. I actually feel really comfortable with this division and how it turned out, taking it game by game. This one is one of the ones I feel most comfortable with record-wise, as you guys kind of diagnose it. Adam, I'm going to let you go first so these guys can kind of take it all in and breathe in all this great work here. This division, again, it's kind of the top two and the bottom two.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your statement that this is a division that I feel best about where my standings kind of played out with. I feel like I have, at least in my opinion, my best read on these four teams, top to bottom, for a division of any of these divisions. I think Washington's going to be a disaster. I think in a way they're almost, kind of not necessarily tanking. I'm not going to say that, but like we're thinking more about Washington as the possibility as first round pick next year than actually competing for a playoff spot. You know how I feel about the Giants. I think their season last year was more of a fluke than anything. Love Brian Daboll as a head coach, but when you really go back and watch the Giants last year, pretty much none of their wins were really impressive wins. Like they snuck out a couple wins, and props to them that they were a grinder type of team. But kind of everything went right for the Giants last year, and it's very hard to repeat that. The Eagles, of course, they're going to be good. They're kind of bringing back the whole roster, but don't underestimate the fact that they lost both of their coordinators. That's a bigger deal, I think, than most people are giving it credit for. That's a lot of changes in just one offseason from a system type of standpoint and from a coaching kind of standpoint. And then look, I'm a Dallas fan. I'm sure my opinion of Dallas is very biased, but it'd be hard to say. Like, I think everyone kind of agrees Dallas is going to be a playoff team this year. My record of 14-3 may be a little bit higher than most, but I don't see really anything to not like about the Cowboys this year.
Let's see if Jordan gives you as much crap as he gave me about Pittsburgh, since he's a Dallas fan himself. Jordan, how are you feeling about the results on the NFC East?
Well, the difference is pretty clear, Chris. Dallas is what we call a good football team.
All right, David, what do you think?
I think 14-3 might be a little bit high in the sky. I think that's a best case scenario, and some things would get right. But I think Dallas is definitely going to win, 11 to 12 games pretty easily.
They'll still lose their first playoff game, so it's not a big deal.
No, we'll win the first one. We'll lose the second one. But
we'll lose to San Fran.
Maybe picking a postcard since but nobody in this division repeats. Hasn't happened in 20 some odd years, and so I think Dallas wins the division. I think Philly's very much in that mix. I think they're a playoff team. I do think you guys are sleeping a little bit on the Commanders and the Giants. I'm not saying either are playoff teams. I'm not even saying either are great teams. But, the NFC East, they did send 3 teams to the playoffs last year. Well, and Washington, it's not like they were, 4-13. They were in the mix very late in the season as well. I 1,000% agree with Adam. I think a lot of the Giants' season last year was fluky.
A lot of games within one score. A lot of games they could have very easily lost if there had been a couple extra minutes on the clock.
I actually think the Commanders were a better team last year than the Giants. They just were on the other end of that coin where they lost a bunch of close games. I think the Commanders, it's all about Sam Howell. If he is decent, I think that team wins 7 to 8 games. If he is really bad, I think it's probably the 4 to 5 range.
And I think that's kind of where this is reflecting, is that we do not know what we're going to get out of Sam Howell, but we also don't have very high expectations. We don't think we're going to get a lot. And it's sad because they have such a great receiving core.
And they still have a solid defensive line.
They do.
They have some pieces. So to me, if Sam Howell can beat Taylor Heineke, that's a fringe playoff team. It's that simple. They're right on the outside looking in.
So what I want to do real quick, I know we are on the clock here, but is take what you were saying with the Giants and Washington, that we're sleeping on them a little bit. Where would you give them wins that we didn't give them wins? Because we can see every team throughout the entire thing. And that's really the trick here as we broadcast live from Canton. When you see each game and take it each game, it's easy to say Washington's not going to be great this year. I give them 5-6 wins. But when you look at it game by game like this, week by week, as myself and Adam did, it really changes the perspective and how it comes out. Again, we didn't pre-plan any of this. We took it as it was. We didn't go and look above or below. We did each division on its own, week by week, team by team, for each episode. You can find those at that EFIN Sports Show, EFIN, on Twitter or YouTube. Listen to those at your leisure. So where would you give some wins that maybe we didn't give?
Washington right? I think they could beat Denver. I don't think they'll beat Buffalo. I think they could split with Philadelphia. I think they'll beat Chicago. I think Chicago is one of the worst teams in the NFL, Travis Sumter. I think they can beat Atlanta, right? I think they can beat New England. I think they can beat the Rams. I'm not saying they will win all of those, but if they were to win those 6, now you're looking at a 10-win team, right? And I think they finish somewhere in that 7 to 9 range, most likely. I think they'll win a couple of those toss-ups.
Well, and
David?
to your point earlier, we're not sure if Tua will last till week 13. I think they could possibly beat Miami. Tua's not there.
Adam, what do you think about what you just heard?
Yeah, I mean, I just differ on Washington. I don't think that they're all that good all around. I know they have the solid defense and some offensive weapons, but I think there's a lot of question marks there. I don't believe in Sam Howell at all, and to me, that's really what it comes down to. I think he's going to be a disaster. I think he's going to be really bad, and I think at the end of the year, they'll be in the mix as one of the top draft picks. And unfortunately, I like the guy, but I think Ron Rivera is going to get fired as well after this year, and they're going to start over, new coach, new quarterback next year.
I actually think he'll kind of be happy to go. I'm sure he's probably already packed his bags and he's just waiting for his ticket. So we are live in Canton. We're doing this show live. We got the Fantasy Football Expo. We got Jordan Thomas of Fantasy Sports Corporation. We got David Genesis of Genesis Card Breaks. AFC East is up next. Again, I feel fairly comfortable. Actually, I lie. I don't feel as comfortable with this one because I don't know how long Tua is going to last, and I think he does make a huge difference in Miami. I have said that I think this is Aaron Rodgers' best team of his entire career. I don't think he's ever had a team this good behind him. I don't know how people feel about that, but he's got the offensive rookie of the year, the defensive rookie of the year. He's got a fantastic defense. He literally LeBron James some of his own receivers. So I am a little high on the Jets. We know Adam is not quite as high on the Jets this year. And of course, Buffalo is Buffalo. This is going to be a competitive division. It's really kind of hard to predict because we've never seen Belichick have to struggle like this. Again, all the points I just brought up. David, what do you think with what you're looking at?
I think Miami can win this division if Tua stays healthy. I think they have the best all-around team. We saw Buffalo drop off slightly last year, especially with Allen. I mean, he was a little banged up, but that's been his thing too. He gets a little banged up. Normally doesn't throw all those interceptions. I don't think Buffalo's as good as this. I also am down. I'm with Adam on the Jets. I'm not sold on Rodgers. I like the Jets. I don't like Rodgers in particular. And New England, it's the only reason that I think that they have a shot at all is Belichick.
Yeah, and they do have a good defense. Jordan?
I think New England is garbage, and I think they will win 5 games max. I think they'll win 3 to 4, and I think they are closer to what Washington is in Adam's mind. I think they are a top 3 pick looking to replace Matt and Daddy Jones next season, and probably Bill Belichick too, because without the GOAT, he's nothing.
So Bill Belichick packing his bags. You heard it from Jordan Thomas.
Yeah. I don't think he'll ever make the playoffs this year. I don't know if it's this year or next year. That's his last season, but I think it's only a matter of time.
Do you think they won't let him go? He'll leave, right?
I think it'll be a mutual parting, but I mean it's clear he's not that dude without Tom Brady. Now these other 3 teams, all playoff teams in my opinion. You got America's team, the Miami Dolphins, arguably the best offense in the NFL. You have the New York Jets, who just went out and added Aaron Rodgers to a roster that has talent all over it. They were going to get some big-time reinforcements back on that offensive line, too, which is something I think people are sleeping on. And then you got Buffalo, who I think is the best team in the division. Now listen, this is going to seem like a hot take, but it's not a hot take, right? It would not shock me if any 3 of those teams were the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. I'm not saying any of them will win the Super Bowl, but I could see a world where Rodgers navigates the AFC, maybe misses Mahomes or Burrow, one of those guys, and gets through. I could see a world where Tua just gets into this unbelievably hot place with Tyreek and Waddle, and they go on a run. And I mean, Buffalo's already been knocking on the door. So
Yeah.
I still think Kansas City makes it to the Super Bowl out of the AFC East, but I think Miami,
But they're not
the Jets,
walking in.
and the Buffalo are all legitimate threats.
And Adam, we've talked about that, about how the AFC is easily so much more competitive. It's such a stronger division. The AFC East could be this year's NFC East. We don't have it that way, but I mean, there is potential that they could be the one, with 3 teams looking at a playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with both of them on Miami. You also know, Chris, I'm very high on Miami this year. Obviously, that's pretty contingent on Tua's health. But let's not forget, last year, even with all the Tua stuff going on, they still made the playoffs last year, even with Tua missing all that time. And then they went and they got Jalen Ramsey this offseason as well to improve their defense next to that arguably most talented offense in the entire NFL. So very high on Miami if Tua can stay healthy. I do agree with that point that it would not shock me if Miami's the team to come out of the AFC and go to the Super Bowl. Buffalo obviously can be that team as well. I agree with Jordan there. They've been close. They've won playoff games in each of the last 3 years in a row. That's really hard to do in the NFL. Buffalo has done it. And I think people are like, I get it. Buffalo may have looked like they took a little bit of a step back last year. I think people are like not giving Buffalo enough credit this year. Like, they didn't really lose anything. They still advanced in the playoffs last year. Yeah, they looked terrible in that game against the Bengals when they got eliminated, but like, minus that game, the Bills looked like the Bills last year to me.
And they still didn't make the Super Bowl yet again. We move on to the NFC North. The dynamic with the NFC North, of course, is that offense wins game, defense wins championships, and nobody in the NFC North has a defense. Literally nobody has a defense in this division. They get to play the NFC South, though, so there's some wins for them. Of course, they can beat up on each other, and then they've got some random games. So this reflects in the records that we came up with as you guys kind of diagnose this and look over it. Of course, a lot of people want to be high on Minnesota for good reason with Justin Jefferson. Detroit is like everybody's, fan favorite right now. Cinderella team. Green Bay, of course, we want to see what we're going to get with Love. And, Chicago is going to have to figure out how to be more than a one-man team if they want to get anything done. As you guys look at this, David, I'll start with you. What are you thinking about this division and how we broke it down?
I can agree or disagree on this division entirely. I can make a case. This is one of the other divisions. I can make a case for every one of these teams. Chicago would be the hardest one to make a case for. I do think Minnesota regresses. You got to trust Green Bay with their quarterback history, their quarterback pedigree.
Can they hit 3 in a row? 3 Hall of Famers in a row? I don't know.
It's almost like Pittsburgh with our coaches. We've had 3. Bang, bang, bang. It's what we do. Detroit, I like Detroit. I think people are too high on them. I think that they compete this year. I think that it's possible they win the division, but it's not going to be 12-5.
And I have no problem, saying that it's because of the schedule. When you look at it week by week, and the defenses or lack thereof that they also play. Plus, they, like I said, they play in this division. They play the NFC North. It helps me get there with this. Jordan, what are you thinking?
So this one kills me. It really does, because much like the rest of the world, and I feel like Adam can relate to this. I was so excited to see Aaron Rodgers get the hell out of Green Bay.
Adam mentioned it many times during the broadcast.
However, the Green Bay Packers are one of those organizations very similar to the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion, where they are very, very well ran. And it would not shock me if Green Bay didn't take a huge step back this year. I think there's no way Green Bay wins 4 or 5 games. I think 7 wins minimum, and it wouldn't shock me if they got to 9 or 10. I think Minnesota last year was the New York Giants on steroids.
That secondary was just
kept
so
winning
horrible.
games that they should not have won. I think they take a step back this season, but I do also think they're in the mix. And man, David, I think you hit the nail on the head. I want to love the Lions.
Everybody does.
I want to be surprised
Yes.
and shocked by the Lions. But man, they had everything they needed last year and it all fell apart.
And then they got rid of a lot of it. They got rid of a lot of it.
So I do like a lot of what the Lions have. I'm very scared of the Jared Goff roller coaster. He had a pretty good year last year, which means he's probably going to have a pretty shitty year this year. He's very up and down. I will agree with David. Sorry, Travis. The one team in this division that has no chance, in my opinion, is Chicago. And I think the Justin Fields experiment is going to burn out in a very big way this season.
And Adam, we're going to see a ton of points from this division. I don't think there's any argument there. These teams are going to put up points. These are a lot of great wells to sample from for your fantasy team. It's just all those points, because of the lack of defense, may not equate to a lot of wins. Am I off kilter there, Adam?
No, I mean, you're right. These four defenses, I mean, we looked at Detroit and Minnesota last year. They both gave up literally like 1 million points. Chicago kind of in that mix too. I mean, I think from us doing this series, I hate this division. This year, going into this year, I do not like any of these four teams. I think Detroit is being way overhyped. Like, sure, like they could definitely win this division. They could be a playoff team. But again, let's not forget how awful their defense was last year. And their offense kind of outset that by scoring so many points. That's going to be difficult to do again with Jared Goff and with changing both of their running backs, by the way, which I think is probably a bigger deal than some people are making it. Everyone's just assuming, like Gibbs is going to come in and he's going to be a superstar, and maybe he will, but with rookies, it doesn't always work out that way. And the running game was kind of the bread and butter of Detroit last year, and they got rid of, the two running backs, Jamal Williams, who was such a big piece of that team as well. Look, again, I don't like any of these four teams at all, which is kind of why I have the Bears winning this division. Not because I like the Bears, but because I don't like anybody. I don't think anyone's going to be too much higher than 500. And look, just about every year in the NFL, we see at least one division winner that's like, wow, didn't see that one coming. So I wanted at least one of them there because it happens often. And with a division that, in my opinion, is this bad and this many question marks and such a mess across the board, why not take a shot in this one?
Why not? Because, I mean, if you look at it, man, I mean, look, I've got them beating Seattle in week 2. Yes, I've got them beating Dallas at the end. But, look, I've got them beating everybody in the NFC North NFC South except New Orleans. So I got them beating Atlanta. I've got them splitting with Green Bay. I've got them beating Carolina. I've got them beating Tampa Bay. I don't think I'm too far off the freaking rails here when I call these wins out. But in the interest of time, we will move on to the next one, AFC West. Yeah.
Chicago also is facing a last place schedule in a division where all of those teams could, they're all going to struggle defensively. So that Chicago has that bonus of facing a last place schedule.
They do. They just,
They're a last place team.
There you go. They just don't have anything else. The last division, AFC West. This is the division I feel like everybody's kind of excited about it, between the NFC East and the AFC West. And it's not just because the Super Bowl champions are there. It's because there is so much talent. There's so much potential in this division. We know the Chargers have yet to realize that potential. We know what Kansas City can do, and that's why the record is so high. And people kind of get on us about having Kansas City's record so high. But again, look at it from a game-by-game perspective, like myself and Adam did during this show. I mean, they play Detroit, they play Chicago, they play Minnesota and their horrible defense. We got them splitting with the Chargers within the division. But they play teams that they can beat. And not only can they beat them, they have beat them. And the biggest takeaway that we had from the Kansas City episode is all their big games against Philly, against Cincinnati, against the Jets, they're all home games. They got all their big games at home. All their tough opponents, they play at home. Every single one. Every single game where you're like, this could be a game. This could go back and forth. Buffalo, it's in Kansas City. And so this record for me is something that, I, again, feel very comfortable about because it's just set up time and place-wise for Kansas City to be successful. They still got to get to the once they're in the playoffs, they're still going to have to play high caliber teams and get through it. But during the season, this is why the record is the way it is. And of course, Las Vegas, tons of potential there, maybe a little early, and probably still some regression for the number one receiver and running back in this one. Adam, I'm going to let you kind of kick off this one just because it was the last one and it's probably freshest in our head right now.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it with, Kansas City's schedule. I mean, they play tough teams, but you're 100% right. Most of those tougher games, they're getting them at home, and a handful of them, too, they kind of get early in the season as well. So things kind of shook out pretty nicely for Kansas City. For me, like, the team I'm really watching is the Denver Broncos. The whole Russell Wilson disaster last year, I refuse to believe right now that Russell Wilson can't play football anymore. I just think last year was a very bad situation and a lot of bad things going on with Russell Wilson. I think he's going to fix it, and we're going to see a very different version of Russell Wilson this year with Sean Payton, with that new system. It's still a very talented team around him. So, like, if there's, going to be a team that's like an exciting team to watch out of this division that's not named the Chiefs, for me, it's the Broncos.
Jordan?
I hate to do it, but I completely disagree with Adam on that point.
David?
I think that Russell Wilson hasn't been Russell Wilson for a few years now, and I don't think we'll ever see that guy again. I think there are some very rose-colored glasses being worn with Sean Payton. Listen, Sean Payton had an amazing team and an amazing quarterback, and there were still, 3 seasons in a row he finished 7-9. His last season he was 9-8 with Drew Brees, right? I think Sean Payton's being a little overblown, and if you look at recent history, how did John Gruden do coming back out of the booth? How has Ron Rivera done? How has Mike McCarthy done? Granted, Mike McCarthy has been a perennial playoff coach with the Cowboys, but that was already a perennial playoff team. Like, he hasn't.
That team was already built, yeah.
Right? So I think people are looking at Sean Payton as something that he isn't. And I don't expect the Broncos to win more than 5 or 6 games. I think that I don't think that team is a good team overall. With that being said, I think you guys are a little low on the Chargers. They made the playoffs last year. I expect them to be right on the fringe of that again this season. Obviously, I don't think anybody takes out Kansas City or Pat Mahomes, barring, an injury to.
Again, though, and sorry to interrupt, but with the Chargers schedule, which games are they going to win that we don't have them winning? They have a tough schedule, and they don't seem to realize that. But no one argues all the talent and potential that they have, but they have yet to realize that. Herbert puts up the numbers, but you don't have a receiver over like 4 touchdowns, I think it is, on that entire squad.
I mean, because they spread the ball around, and you have Austin Eckler, you have 3 receivers, I'm not super giddy about Kellen Moore, and I have some really bad things to say about that guy coming in as the offensive coordinator, but he's good enough at his job. So just looking at your 8 and 9, Chris, I could easily see them beating Minnesota. I could see them stealing one in Dallas. I would like to pick the Cowboys there, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities. I think Kansas City's probably a loss. I can see the Jets being a 50-50. They will win one of those 2 against Detroit or Green Bay. I don't know which one. New England's a dumpster fire. They can beat them. I don't think Denver's good. I think they can beat them, right? So that's what, 5 or 6. That would put them at 13-14, which I think is unrealistic.
Okay.
But I don't think it's crazy for them to go from 8 to 11, which is enough to get into the playoffs.
There you go, David.
A lot of these could be compared to other teams, in my opinion. The Chargers are basically the AFC San Francisco. Last year, they have so much talent on paper, and you see it in the games where they're fully healthy. But they just had injuries constantly. I think their wide receivers played like 2 or 3 games together.
Yeah.
And still, they were, they made the playoffs. Denver, I feel like it's the opposite of New England with Brady and Belichick. You separated them and found out Brady was the star. Maybe it was never Russell Wilson. Maybe it was always Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll, could be.
Because Seattle looked great last year without Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson looked terrible. And you can't blame all of that on Nathaniel Hackett because he did great things in Green Bay.
Gino Ball.
Yeah. And then the Raiders, I I just feel like they're kind of like Green Bay when they pissed off Aaron Rodgers. You know, they got their number one running back mad right now, not signing him to an extension. They got a quarterback who's going to be hurt at some point in the season, and you know, I just don't think they have the talent to keep up with KC and the Chargers, or even Denver. Realistically, Denver has a lot of talent. I'm just worried about Wilson.
Yeah, Denver they wiped out their running back room, and I don't know that they necessarily refilled it. I do love Denver's defense. I think Denver's defense is extremely strong, someone to be reckoned with. Peyton there, yeah, right. Peyton there, I think, is a plus from what they had last year, but I'm kind of with Adam. I think they definitely have a chance to resurge here. Adam, do you want to wrap this one up for us?
This division?
Yeah.
You know, like, I'll say this about the Raiders, okay? Like, I'll end on the Raiders, and, you know, like, the Chargers, too. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the Chargers, that, like, they have all the talent, but, you know, like, what have they done with it, you know, with, you know, this stacked team that they've had? Basically nothing, right? The Raiders, to me, can be interesting, and I'm not particularly high on the Raiders, but I also would not be surprised if the Raiders are one of the more surprise teams this year. I mean, they need a lot of things to go right for that to happen. First of all, they need Josh Jacobs to play. They need Jimmy Garoppolo to stay healthy. But if those things do happen for the Raiders, who knows? Maybe they'll be one of those teams, because I say this all the time about the NFL. Who we think is going to make the playoffs at the end of the year is never, like, we never feel the same about the teams at the beginning, the middle, or the end. There's always surprises. There's always teams that are better than they're quote unquote supposed to be, and always teams that are worse than they're supposed to be. So there's going to be a few teams that we didn't see coming, and it would not shock me if the Raiders were actually one of those teams.
Jordan, Super Bowl pick, go. AFC, NFC. As we have the
on
last
the spot like that.
We got a couple minutes left. I don't have a lot of lead in here.
So my AFC pick is Kansas City. Until Burrow
Proven
or
otherwise,
somebody knocks
sure.
them out, it's got to be Kansas City. The NFC is wide open, and I don't want to pick the Eagles. I'm smart enough not to pick the Cowboys. I don't believe the Saints are going to be real. The NFC North is trash. Let's go with San Francisco.
San Francisco finally going to get there, get the job done. David?
I hate to agree entirely with you, but that's exactly what I was thinking. You know, nobody in that division repeats twice. And Philadelphia, I think, is going to regress. They lost both coordinators. Their defensive backs are completely different, and a lot of that defense had to do with coverage. So I'm not sure that their defense is going to hold up, especially against offenses like Dallas. So if San Fran's quarterback stays healthy, it's San Fran. And you can't go against Kansas City right now as much as you want to. I was just going to comment about the parity of the league, you know, the way they switch it around. So a last place schedule, that's why we always have somebody last place getting, you know, switching first, because they go against the last place schedule the next year. Kansas City stays the first place schedule every year.
It doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So.
And Chris, to your point, right? The AFC is so loaded. I think there's 5 teams in the AFC that if you switched them to the NFC, they would be the Super Bowl favorite. I'm telling you.
Adam, wrap this up. We got less than a minute.
Well, I'll just say this. If you want to know my Super Bowl picks, if you want to know Chris's Super Bowl picks, you're going to have to tune in next week for the playoff episode. All these teams that we picked to win the divisions, all these teams that ended up being wild cards because of the whole schedule thing we did, we're going to wrap it all up next week with making some playoff picks, and we'll see where that takes us.
Absolutely. Adam Holz, NFL writer at sportskita.com. You can go to sportskita.com, find all Adam's articles. You can also find him on Twitter at Adam Holz Sports. Joins us every week to break all this down. Every team, you can find every episode that we did on That Effin' Sports Show, EFIN, on your favorite podcast station, or just throw it up in the background over on YouTube. Pull it up, listen to it while you go. Each episode is only about 15, 20 minutes. We went through every team. We did every week. We did every game. We brought in Jordan Thomas of Fantasy Sports Corporation. Go find him as Judge Jordan on TSS Fantasy. He's got a little bit of everywhere on the Weekly Throwdown, also on the Fantasy Sports Corporation channel. And you can just search Genesis Card Breaks on Facebook and find David Janis breaking those cards, finding all the great treasures that are inside those packs now. We appreciate you guys joining us. We are live from Canton. Check out the Fantasy Sports Corporation channel this weekend, all weekend long, as we break down the entire expo. We're going to bring it to you. We're going to bring it to you live. We're going to bring you interviews and content, and everything that we see, you will see on the Fantasy Sports Corporation. Everybody have a great one. Be safe. We hope to see you this weekend. We are out of here.